I'm really excited to be here because we have a collective wisdom of close to 100 plus years over here. We have researchers, we have entrepreneurs, we have HR and L&D professionals, and we also have professionals from startup and the legacy ecosystem as well. So in this discussion, we are going to touch upon the foundational level, the foundational aspects of spirituality at workplace and how it impacts the overall well-being of the organization and an individual. I would like to start the conversation by asking one common question to all the panelists. How spirituality at workplace have been approached and adapted in your organization under your leadership? So maybe a few minutes if all of you can give your thoughts on before we get into the specific questions.
Talking about spirituality, I think the book also starts with a beautiful quote saying, it's not human beings experiencing spirituality, but spiritual beings experiencing the human aspects of it. I think that sums up the entirety of what this book brings and tries to bring about. I always remember, how do you bring spirituality to work, right? We have heard from our ancient wisdom that karmanyevadikaraste, right? So all of us, it's on our tongues. It simply means that how do you find meaning at work? And my question for the last 25 years at work, for every hire that I make, is what meaning would you find at our workplace? And I have found answers ranging from scratching their heads to trying to understand the concepts, and some simply answering, I need more money and hence I'm here. But the other aspects of work and finding something that you want is always hollow if there is no meaning, if there is no purpose, and if there is no compassion that goes along with it. I think that dimension is what can be bought through spirituality. I think how we have found spirituality without actually calling it or by that name is to find purpose, find joy in our work, because your waking hours are spent at work, whether you are remote or at the site. Your waking hours are typically spent working, putting your knowledge, skills, competencies, and bringing the best that you could bring to the table. And that can only be possible if you are aligned to finding meaning every single moment of your work. I think that is how I have personally tried to bring in spirituality to work without actually calling it. Now that we have a book, I think we should name it that way, and there is nothing wrong in it. And it actually sums it up very well. I think most of the practitioners, most of the leadership always try to find that meaning at work, and how do you leverage that aspect to make better organizations. Otherwise, it will just be hollow and making a lot of noise. I think that's all.
I think spirituality is a misunderstood term, especially in the context of modern workplaces that we are talking about. I think the first thing that connects to is, are we talking about religion, are we talking about X and Y and Z, and then there are perceptions and there are other things that we may have to handle about. If I have to look at workplaces spirituality, I think to me, I would probably try to put into three words. I think one would be purpose, the other would be values, the third would be meaning. It's important for an organization to look at whether they are finding purpose in, the employees are finding purpose in what they are doing, are they finding values which are aligned, and also do they have meaning to what they do. I think if we are able to balance these three key things, I think we would be able to create a spiritually aligned workplace, and I think this is important. Now, answering Nilesh's question, I think it was about how, what did we do in our organization. So, if I look back, history of Ripples, we have some very interesting instances. However, one which all of us saw was pandemic. And I think that was a testing time when organization had to kind of stand up to maybe balancing these elements. And I'm fortunate enough to be part of an organization where we created instant policies we had different work from home policies for women, we had different work from home policies for men, where we could understand that women may have to give more time at home doing things which otherwise was not happening in a lot of other cases, and we kind of changed those and altered those policies which allowed people to be able to align better. Not only that, I think from a hiring perspective, our interviews are always from an aspect of the value connect. So, how do they see their values getting aligned with ours is a very, very important connect, and this is delve deeper into it. It is part of our the evaluation matrix that we have for hiring, etc. And we have been fortunate enough to be an organization with single-digit attrition. We have had people being there with us for really, really long. I think it is something that that we have been able to do. But largely, I think there is a lot that can be done. I think Anshul spoke a lot in terms of what policies and what measurements and how it can complement the existing system, whether it is a performance management system, whether it's a hiring mechanism, whether we are looking at L&D. So yes, I think it's time that we start looking at this aspect as well, and these elements to what rates great places to work or best places to work with elements like this coming into picture and becoming a standard in terms of how it's being dealt with.
Yeah. And I would like to share my perspective of working with various organizations, and I completely agree that corporate spirituality is playing a very important role towards promoting employee wellness, right? And I think it's, you mentioned about sense of purpose, sense of meaning. I think that also is very important in terms of delivering the right kind of job what employees are in the organization. And I will correlate with the wellness with the health piece, right? And we have been currently working with more than 250 organizations, especially on MSME sector and the large sector. And we have worked with 8 million plus employees. And we have seen that how employee wellness or corporate spirituality is actually taking a boardroom discussion. It's a kind of topic in every meeting which is being discussed with the CHROs and with the other business leaders. And I think it plays a very, very important role towards creating the employee connected to the goals, and most importantly, health is something which is coming out very, very well. So if employees are healthier, they are more happier, resilient, agile, and more productive. And I also have the entrepreneur experience and journey I'm having. If employees are not connected to the cause, right, they're not delivering the results, it is impacting overall organization, right? And it is the hit is towards the bottom line. So how do you really continue the journey? So hence employee wellness and health plays a very, very critical role from my aspect.
Firstly, thank you all the panel members. I mean, the examples, so my example would be very small in terms of as an employee. So your examples have been as an employer, which are huge and big examples to endorse spirituality at work. So for me, how it started was, so I was fortunate to start my career with a company named SL Global. So this particular company, so maybe around more than 15 years back, because of the leadership that they had at that point of time. Because obviously unless it becomes a culture, most of these things are leadership driven. So they had certain values in place which led to a culture which was very close to workplace spirituality, which now I know what it is. So while I was working there, I was hardly 21 years. So they purposely did not hire me as an employee. They hired me as a retainer. They said, we want to take your services individually. At that point of time, it was difficult for me to understand what even that means. But then they had already assessed in the interview that if we give her a routine job, that will not satisfy her. So they wanted to give challenging and meaty things to me. But the ecosystem that they gave for a girl who was only 20, 21 years, told to go at the shop floor, set up their yantrashala, set up their competency framework. So even though I might gather knowledge, the support and the ecosystem and the sense of community provided was humongous. And the ethics in place, the values in place, and my well-being was taken so much care of that even after working for so many other companies after that, I would still say that my boss at that time, Mr. Surendra Babu, he was like the best boss ever. So he had that thing that, what is it that this person is seeking meaning at work? He would allocate work that way. So, that's my resident is personally with workplace spirituality in my own career.
Nanda, my next question is with you. I know it for a fact that employee wellness is very close to your heart, and you have spent decades in working on this particular field, right? How important do you think spirituality in workplace is to holistic well-being of employees, and what kind of strategies companies can adopt in order to ensure that there is a fine balance between professional success as well as personal ambitions?
What are the death percentage because of the various health issues, especially NCDs in the country? It's approximately 80% of the deaths are because of the NCDs. And these are diabetes, cancer, heart diseases. Right? India is being called as a diabetes capital of the world. And now more than 30 million people are having the cardiovascular issues, which is again very, very alarming because it's going to increase further in a decade. Right? Now, how are these being, managed, right, in the workplaces? So, as I said, the healthier employees are happier, they are more resilient and agile, right? So health plays a critical role, and especially when you're talking about in the organization, right, the higher cost of insurance, right, in terms of hospitalization cost or various other issues where the employees are not connected to their goals or they're not able to deliver their real KRAs, right, which is overall impacting the organization goals, right? So how do you manage it? So I think what is very important is making leadership responsible, right? Having a change in the mindset of the leaders, because that's how they create the value system, and it's values which drives behavior, and that drives action, and that drives results, right, at the end of the day. So I think those are very, very important questions that leadership should do the walk the talk, right? And having said that, from Arogya World, we have been working with the various progressive organizations who are having a strategic, initiatives towards improving the health and well-being of the employees, right? And this initiative, we have created the entire assessment tool as per the Clinton Association and as well as Emory University. So we have various parameters and factors which is important from a corporate perspective, that how you are creating an environment, right, or ecosystem to create a healthier workplace or a happier workplace, right? And these are something which is being divided into two categories, which is physical health and mental health. And that's why the shifting mindset and promoting well-being, right, leadership plays a very, very important role. And we have seen this in COVID, right, that how many of us got impacted. And we are, when we are talking to the various organizations, CHROs, they have been promoting the well-being initiatives very, very consistently, and they are seeing the result by improving 8 to 10% on their bottom line, right? And they are making their employees healthier, right? Either by, connecting them towards their real goal deliverables, right? Or creating a sense of urgency, accountability, right? Which are again very, very important aspects. So these are, some of the thoughts and views which we have seen and we have collated from these progressive organizations. Humble request to every corporate leader is that you should take care of your employees, right? That what exactly they are going through, especially from the mental well-being perspective. And today, if you see, a lot of employees are going through stress, anxiety, trauma, depression, which is impacting on their day-to-day work. And not only in the workplace, but also it is impacting on their work-life balance, right? And you know, they are having various challenges. And I think that's important that as a human, we should think of each other and should be agile in our thought process.
Leadership plays a very crucial role, and these kind of initiatives are always top to bottom down. Animesh and Chinath, both of you have been in leadership position for a very long time. Anything that you would like to add from the well-being point of view? You did mention about how COVID times were challenging. So anything that you recall what done around that time?
We have to really look at whether organizations today are responsive enough to what's changing with employees, right? And I think there is a big lag, and it's not necessarily lag with bigger the organization, bigger the lag. It's about the mindset. It's about what an entrepreneur or what the people who start the organization, their mindset is. It's very, very important that it's important to ask, do we have a conversational and an understanding mindset? If we are able to do that, I think we would be able to cater to various needs. We have body, mind, spirit. Wellness can take care of body. The kind of work that happens, would take care of your mind. And the spirit is something that would go about defining and driving it. So yes, I think post-COVID, what we have seen is that people are much more aware of what is important and what means to them, right? And this has to reflect in the way the work culture evolves. So I think probably this is something that
I would only say that with increasing uncertainties around all of us and a fast-paced world where technology is pacing at a tremendous speed, it is very vital to ensure that our investment in well-being and health through spirituality, which is a dimension that needs to be tapped, to be able to cope up with that change and not be stressed out, right? It is not only physical fitness, but it is also mental fitness, and as I said, keep your spirits alive to be able to perform and excel at whatever that you're doing. So the spirituality aspect of bringing it into your day-to-day practice is very essential. I think that is when you actually be able to cope up and not be stressed with the environment around, which is changing very, very rapidly. And all of us are experiencing that. Yesterday it was drones, tomorrow it will be bombs, right? If not something else. So I would say find something that will help you as an aid. Find something that will give you a holding platform so that you can navigate this phase of journey by not being very perturbed, but also be able to perform and excel. I think it is very essential that we adapt these things so that we don't we are not overwhelmed by the environmental challenges that are posing. It is not skills and competencies that are challenging us anymore. It is definitely the environment all the way around, and the portion of environmental challenges has gone up in the last decade.
I think everyone said here of the leadership examples, this particular concept of workplace spirituality, it's actually an OD intervention. That's an organizational development intervention. If we're implementing it in an organization, it always starts at the top. So first we assess what is their idea of spirituality at home. That's how the scale gets formed for the organization. And then it percolates down to champions. So all the examples that we heard here, so those are the very relevant examples from the leadership team and much needed to implement this.
That's absolutely true. I think Nandan also happened to emphasize on that. So I think apart from, once we have touched upon how leadership is important and crucial in terms of facilitating the spirituality at workplace, then I think initially you also spoke about HR. But in my opinion, apart from HR, L&D professionals are extremely crucial in driving this, because more than HR, I feel they are connected with the employees day in and out. They know pulse of the organization where they are lacking, they know the pulse of the employee where the skills are missing. So Animesh, the next question I have from you, from your experience, because you have spent decades in L&D, how can learning and development programs be used to facilitate workplace spirituality and drive individual and organizational effectiveness both?
For long, L&D has focused on the KSAs, right? Knowledge, skill, and attitude, and competencies, and connecting it to performance and connecting to productivity. Adding a dimension of catering to workplace spirituality is important. The way it can happen, according to me, is probably having learning initiatives which talk about purpose, talk about compassion, talk about values, talk about meanings, talk about spirit. And this can be done because you can probably have gratitude circles which can lead to discussions like this. You can have retreats where you connect with nature. You can have silence, for example. We hardly get time to reflect upon or to be silent. We are the most gadgeted generation, maybe. Even in a lift, when you travel from ground floor to maybe the 10th or 12th floor, you have a display screen trying to show something across to you. So I mean, L&D can be really, really powerful because you can have value-based storytelling workshops. You can have so much that you can do through L&D. And the purpose of L&D is to make you realize, make you think, make you experience. And if you, through workshops, through these initiatives, if you are able to create that experiences for teams and for individuals and for organizations, I think that would truly have an involved and engaged employee rather than an employee who is generally suddenly around the appraisal cycle, happy around the boss and pleasing around the boss, and so that's an important thing. And I think it's also important that you connect learning back to how performances are being managed, right? I think we have a a structure which is very, very reporting driven, right? I think that needs to have a balance with reflection driven. Are we bringing in the idea of reflection to performance appraisals or not? Are we bringing in the idea of how self-aware people are? That is what probably would be my perspective. Yeah.
The ways are very simple and it's easy to execute, difficult to measure though. And you have dealt with many clients in your career. In your opinion, what percent of the organizations are actively looking at spirituality in workplace? And if they are not, why do you think they are not?
It's rare, I would say that it's not very common. I think we are all in an era of valuation-driven organizations. That itself is not real. We are at a stage where even CEOs have a clear KPI and very, very definite outcomes that they need to bring in. Hoping a perfect balance, a perfect workplace is probably not possible, right? But it is about adding to the dimension. For example, one very good example, what Anshul spoke about, is how you let people go from your organization, isn't it? And is there compassion involved in it? Are conversations involved in it? Now, if we talk about hybrid work, we talk about people, a lot of organizations now bringing people back to work, come to 3 days to work, 4 days to work, 2 days to work. So are we looking at commuting or are we looking at communication, right? Are we communicating enough with employees? Are we understanding their needs? Are we understanding that performances can be driven, objectives can be achieved, goals can be achieved, maybe by communicating better rather than making people commute for the organizations where it is possible, right? So I think an alternative would only be bought in if we have enough cases, success cases, I would say, from industry. but there has to be a start, and I think books like this are the start. I think anybody, if I would be happy if somebody catches this over a flight without mobile being the disturbing element, reads paras from this book, finds it interesting, reaches out to Anshul, and kind of have a start and have a success case, and then that kind of has a ripple effect, right, in terms of getting things done, isn't it?
You have experience in working with larger organization, and now you are leading HR for startup, right? So you have seen both the worlds, right? Where there's a lot of money and comfort, and then there's a hustle and challenges. How companies have dealt with layoff have made significant impact on employees' perspective, whether they should be loyal to the organizations or not. Now, there have been a case, I think all of you must be aware, when Bajaj had to shut down their first factory, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj declared that we are going to give your lifetime, whatever salary that you are going to get, you will be getting till the time of your retirement. And that this decision was welcomed with a lot of dhol baja and it was celebrated. Then there are companies which just look at, I would not name, but they would do layoff in the guise of evolution, that things are changing, technology is evolving, and for them now people are just numbers. So and they would give good remuneration before letting people go, right? But this compassion only driven by the depth of pocket an organization has, and do people, especially leadership in such organization, do they lose sight of empathy, and why do they lose the sight of empathy and compassion when they have to deal with difficult decisions like layoff? So I'm taking layoff as an example, but you can touch upon other aspects when they have to deal with performance improvement plan, or they have to give feedback, or somebody has gone on emergency leave, right? So why this lack of empathy and compassion is there, and what organization can do to overcome that?
Right, I have been, lucky or unlucky to be part of the execution of this in multiple organizations as part of mergers and acquisitions, changeovers, evolution, sustenance of business. You have multitude of names that it comes with. Compassion and business goals in the minds of leaders sometimes are seen as conflicting, though it is not, right? When that conflicting thoughts emanate in a leader who has not done that before and sees that as the only tool that can be wielded to be able to get back to the normal of profitability, normal of business goals and objectives, it is seen as a must-do, right? Now then, what happens is then they try and apply compassion and empathy to wade through that situation rather than truly be oneself, to be able to go pat on the shoulder and say, hey, this is where we are and this is what is happening, how can I help you? You definitely cannot replace that job and with the fundamental hygiene of a wage to a worker who's laid off, right? Because that's the reality. Now, without compassion, without empathy, and using those to just ride through that situation and in some cases, quote unquote, get rid of the resource has been in practice. And that is where you see a conflicting distancing of the self and that impact being felt all the more so rather than the actual reality, right? One dimension of it. Now, how can leaders change this scenario? How can we be more empathetic, be more compassionate? I'll just narrate a small incident. A few years back, I was attending an interview and somebody asked me, what is your aspiration? I said, I want to be leading this organization sometime into the future. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to learn whatever you do. Then he laughed at me and said, go back, have some paneer pakoras and come back. I did not understand. So I went back and sat in the canteen, had a cup of coffee and then had some pakoras as he suggested and came back. I still did not have that answer, right? So he said, you know what, when you have to be in my shoes, first thing and the most important thing is to remove your shoes and wear my shoes. Right? Without removing your shoes, if you want to fit into my shoes, you will not be able to balance yourself properly. You might eventually fall down. In reality, this is also what happens if we don't apply ourselves to the situation of that individual experiencing that as leaders, irrespective of the financial realities or the decisions which are hard. It is very, very difficult to share that empathy, share that compassion, and be one with that decision. Right? It is very, very important. Now, again, another track record as part of mergers. I have been part of thousands of layoffs in the past decade in the Indian countless large corporations. Not a single case have I had where that person has not come back and thanked me for the way that I let go. Right? I'm not claiming this as something which I have to wear on my shoulders, but being compassionate, being one with the person, and sharing that pain for that moment and trying to extend that helping hand goes a long way and into long careers, because its world is small and we all go through pain, right? And it is very important to show that and be compassionate. And that is how spirituality also gets aligned. If you are not spiritual enough in terms of understanding the realities of life and how life has to be journeyed, work will come and go, but you will never find that meaning. Meaning is found when two individuals can pat on their back and hold their shoulders in difficulty.
Putting yourself into one's shoes and feeling the pain what they would go through if the same message was communicated to them would shift the perspective of how you deal with people. And I think that approach can be applied to any situation where you have to deal with difficult conversation with the employees. Why do you think today is the time that spirituality enters the workplace, and why organizations should take it more seriously than ever? We did speak about it, but maybe we would like to hear a bit more from you on this. Why the timing is right?
Because right now, more than ever, we see wounded souls around us. The culture in which we are operating at workplace, after workplace, there is a total lack of connect within oneself, to others, and that is actually creating n number of well-being issues that Nandan sir was mentioning of. So most crux lies there in terms of the soul being wounded. And at work, when the soul is wounded, that wounded soul comes back home and actually injures the entire family and then the society at large. So spiritual HRM, when we say is working on these certain principles, it's a construct. We are nowhere telling anyone to do yoga or meditation. Obviously that can be a part of acknowledging inner life, a part of certain initiatives that we take. But it is very necessary when we are doing that also, we don't end up doing a bandaging activity, wherein our culture doesn't changes, but we, just like giving a cult pass so that the employees get fit, rather than giving them a good work-life balance for them to have time to get fit. So it is more of necessary that when we are implementing workplace spirituality, it gets imbibed in the culture. And in current times, it is more of important because, as I said, the psychological contract is broken. Neither the employer is trusting the employee nor the employee is trusting the employer. Every other day there is a falling business empire, and the leadership actually doesn't know what has gone wrong. So what is going wrong is not acknowledging the spirit of the person, which the person has not evolved. The person there are certain things that have become hygiene now. That I am going to get money. I am going to get these things. So these things are being already given. So what next? So that what next is acknowledging the soul of the person. So that's how it is very, very relevant in the current times.
I think we have almost reached towards the end of our panel discussion, but I would like to take the opportunity and ask one last question to all of you. And I also have my personal interest in knowing the answer. So all of us have been an employee or a founder at one point in time, right? Some of us work for passion, some of us work for the need of it because there has to be food on the table. when someone is working with passion, they will find joy, they will by default give productivity, companies will be happy. But when I, as someone who is working for the need of a job, I may not be happy with the work. I may not be able to give my 100%, hence companies may not be happy. But what are your suggestions to everyone here and probably whoever will watch this video later? How can they find meaning in their work? And even if it's not their passion, how can they continue to enjoy it while add value to the organization? So how should they shift their perspective towards the work that they are doing? So I would love to hear all of your views on this.
I've been running with this philosophy in my own personal life of creating more smiles per hour of work as a leader. Now, in many of forums, people come and ask me, how do you measure it? I said, did you use the protractor? Because the moment you lose the sight, right? You don't measure how many smiles you work. That's given. In terms of how do you ensure, this is driven as a culture, this is driven as an organization. How can we find meaning in our work? Sometimes we're all thrust into some kind of work that we probably might not have chosen, right? It was an option that came and that was the only option in life, and so many times it happens in our career contours that we don't get what we want. But then when you find something, try and align yourself of seeing what best you can do out of what we have, right? I think that's the crux of it. If you don't do that, any work that you try and do, even planting a simple seed on a roadside will give you joy. But even if it is not your motto, right? You just stop your vehicle, take a plant, take a seed, go and plant a seed. So you have to be aligned totally to whatever you are doing, and that's when you find meaning and joy. Do not measure the work in terms of this is the work that I need to do, hence I will be happy. Don't tag your happiness to what you're doing. Happiness is internal, happiness is always, it is eternal. If you try to find it via Google search, you will only get articles.
I think, first of all, I think it's very important for one to realize while working, whether it is to get food on the table or not, is to understand that that person is important, right, to an organization. That is the first thing that, for long, I remember 15 years back, a wicket keeper in a cricket team was not important, right, as important as anybody else. And now we have the best captain ever produced who is a wicket keeper, isn't it, right? So all roles are important. How you define it for yourself is an important element. What value you are adding is an important element. And I think both individual and an organization has a role to play. It's important that the organization makes an employee realize that they are important, and it's also important for an employee to understand that they are important. Self-worth as well as the work that organization creates, these are equally important. The way, I would probably, if I have to maybe give a solution to this or maybe give my perspective to it, I think there are two things that are largely defining this. One is how teams are structured and created in an organization. Is it a hierarchical, I win or you lose kind of team spirit that we are talking about? Or are we talking about a cohesive, something like a sports team kind of element that we are bringing in where people come together to achieve a single goal? I think if organizations are able to balance that across, then I'm sure to a great extent they would be able to give purpose and meaning to what one is doing, because then whether it is a wicket keeper, whether it is a goalkeeper, whether it is somebody who is center forward or not center forward, all will have an important role to play. The second element would be just like how we have customer-centric approach. Can we create a sentiment or employee-centric approach? And it's not just that you need to say it in your values and mission and vision. Do you really practice it? If organizations are able to do that, where they are able to bring in the same focus, the way they have customer success managers and the way they have, if they are able to bring that element in for employees, I think they would be able to maybe increase what one feels about themselves while working, and then they would be able to truly connect to the workplace and able to give whatever they have, whether it is their because a lot of times we are not clear what we are. I mean, when I was lot of times we make decisions because somebody else is making that decision, whether it is career choices, whether it is so if we are able to bring that meaning in, we would do whatever we are doing in a better manner, and that would be good for individual and the organization. Yeah.
For me, I think what's important is connect with the purpose and passion. If that passion is not there in an individual, how much you push him, he will not be at his best. And I think he has to be connected with the purpose, right? And I take my own example. I have a great opportunity to be an entrepreneur and spread the business across the country. But what is really, making me thrive every day when I get up in the morning is to make a difference in the life of the people, right? And that's how, health and wellness is being ingrained in my system. Even when I speak to my colleagues or, with my family members, it automatically comes back. And when you are crazy about something, by default, you will deliver the better results. As simple as that. And I was talking to one of the leaders from a corporate sector, and he said that, I'm seeing every day whether my employee is happy or not. Is he delivering or not? And I said, why are you doing that? Because that's maybe not your responsibility. He said, it's a part of my KRA now. Can you believe it? An organization is making the manager's KRA that your employee or your team subordinate happiness quotient is XYZ or not, right? So these are the kind of thought process which we are seeing from a corporate progressive organization, I always call them, right? But I think it's a long way to go from a startup ecosystem to MSMEs because they are not really still inclined to implement sustainable corporate spirituality or wellness practices. And I think that's more important. They should think of their employee first, right? And I remember in my earlier tenure in HCL, Mr. Vineet Nair always used to say employee first. And in other organizations, which is Leela Palace, the captain, honorable chairman, CPK Krishna Nair used to say, Athithi Devo Bhava, which means you give respect and you will automatically get respect. Because that is what something is the entire environment will support you. Those are my thoughts.
What I am doing is something that is actual, not a fit of what I actually want to do. And can I still be happy? Can I still give my 100%? So those scenarios keep happening. To overcome those scenarios or to avoid those scenarios more of, it becomes very necessary that the essence of a student is evaluated at the highest school level. That's the higher secondary level in terms of career counselings, in terms of career assessments, psychometric testings, so that when the person the student chooses the further stream, they give a list of 4-5 streams which align to your mindset. So if you maneuver across those streams, that disconnect level becomes lesser and lesser. Maybe, say my thing would have been something legal, something in art, something in HR, something in certain things. So even if I don't have a best of it, the opportunity in HR, my second best, I'm still happy. At least I'm aware that what is my second best. So that disconnect that, I have no mindset in curing people and I still end up becoming a doctor just because it's a family pressure. And then I'm not happy my entire life. So that needs to be addressed in the current times, so that the spirit of the person is engaged at work. If the person knows that my mindset and my machinery, which is originally built, is built more for these 4-5 things, then that disconnect would be lesser. So, yeah.
And I would like to open to the audience if you have any question.
What's the role of the family got to do in what you're doing and where you've reached so far?
Family's role is everything. So that's my husband, Ankur Nogaria. So I've been married 14 years now. So everything that I do today, and have been doing from so many years, has been because of a lot of support and understanding of what I want in life from his end, and he adjusting his life around what I want. So that is a very fortunate thing for me, and I feel really blessed. So yeah, thank you. And I have two little kids. So with God's grace, they are somehow obedient, but very naughty for their age, of course. But then yes, and I would not want to miss out my parents, because that's a solid foundation that they gave me of challenging the status quo, pursuing and believing in what you actually believe. And even now I bank a lot on them for many things. So that's the family. So you're nothing without your family.
Well, thank you so much to all the panelists. I think in the process of understanding the book, I think we got to know a lot what is very, very crucial to spirituality at workplace, which includes respect, empathy, compassion, common values. I really hope that you get your hands on the book, give it a read. It would definitely add a lot of value to your work and your personal life as well. Once again, thank you so much to all of you.